Hey guys, welcome back to 90 Feet From Home. I'm here with a new episode that was requested, I believe, by Philip in the comments, so hi Philip, this one's for you. And today we are going to talk about the 25 and 40-man rosters and what the difference is between them. So the 25-man roster is considered to be the active roster, or the players who regularly take part in the Major League Club's games, who are featured in almost every episode. This isn't a TV show. A 162 episode season is a long season. Anyway, so the active roster are the 25 players who regularly get featured in games, not necessarily every game, but most of the games of the regular season. So this includes the starting 8 position players, and I'm going to throw my video up that is all about the position players and creating lineups, so you can get a better sense of what those positions are and kind of what they mean and what the different batting orders are, so that'll pop up there. So in addition to those 8 position players, you also have your starting pitchers, your relief pitchers, and any utility or reserve players. Now, the number of each of these is not necessarily set in stone, as we've seen that different teams kind of take different approaches to what kind of numbers of players they carry on the bench. And some teams, of course, like the Rays, don't necessarily abide by a standard 5 starting pitcher rotation. But by and large, this is kind of the breakdown of what those 25 positions look like. You have 5 starting pitchers, 7 relief pitchers. Again, this is very flexible. Lots of teams can have more than this. Very few will have less, but 7 is usually a good number to assume that there are in the bullpen. You'll have 2 catchers, and this is important because you need to have at least one backup. In case your regular starting catcher happens to get injured, you need to have at least one player on the bench who can take over for them. And as we discussed in situations like a knuckleballer, and I'll throw that video up to pitch types, a lot of times there are pitchers who will have their own kind of designated catcher, in which case teams might carry 3 catchers instead of 2. You'll have 6 infielders and 5 outfielders. Now, in this kind of situation, sometimes you'll also have utility guys or super utility players who can kind of take on any of those positions, including catcher, but usually they'll just be a guy who can easily kind of bounce back and forth between the infield and the outfield. With American League teams, the DH will usually take on the role of one of those infield or outfield positions, and this is also because that DH is usually capable of playing first or third base or one of the fielding positions if need be. Now, with the 25-man roster, say that team happens to have a split doubleheader. I'll throw up my video on rain delays so you can kind of figure out what doubleheaders are. In the instance of a split doubleheader, which is an afternoon and evening game on the same day, Major League rules do allow for them to have a 26th man on the roster because they are playing 2 games in the same day. So they'll usually bring somebody up from the minor league system just for that day to fill in a necessary bench role so that they have enough people. Sometimes they'll also bring up a pitcher in that instance so that they may not need to go to one of their regular starting pitchers and tire him out for the regular rotation. So that's what the 26th man is, if you ever hear that mentioned. Now, the 40-man roster is the extended roster. And this 40-man roster does include those 25 men on the regular roster, and then there are additional players beyond that. So these are players who are signed to major league contracts, but may not necessarily be playing at the major league level. So yeah, again, you get those 25 men that are at the major league level, and then additional players who may be called up at any time. So the 40-man roster also includes any players that may have been put on the injured list, excluding the 60-day injured list. We'll talk about that in a second. It also includes any major league players who have been options to the minor league team. And we'll talk about optioning in a totally different episode, but stay tuned for that because it is kind of a different scenario, and I think you guys will want to know more about what optioning means. So back to that 60-day injured list. It's important to know that once a player gets moved to that 60-day injured list, they are removed from the 40-man roster, which allows the team to move another minor league player or a prospect onto that 40-man roster, making them eligible to play in the major league club. So without getting too much into it, because I think there should be a whole episode on the injured list and how there are different time frames on it, the 60-day injured list basically means that that player is going to miss a very large chunk of time, usually more than 60 days, and it won't be available to that team. Usually it means they're going to miss either the entire season or several months of play, likely due to a surgery or due to a injury that is going to take quite a while for that player to recover from. Which is then why you would want to have space on the roster to replace that player, because they won't be coming back anytime soon. So then once that space on the 40-man roster is cleared up, like I said, they can move a minor league player up there, or if they've perhaps traded for a new player, they can add him to the 40-man roster. Or if they've picked up a free agent contract to kind of fill in for that player who's on the injured list, they can then move that new player onto the 40-man roster right away. It's important to know that a team cannot call up a player to the major leagues if they are not on that 40-man roster. So if a team wanted to remove a player from the 40-man roster without them being on the 60-day injured list, there are ways to do this. First, the team has to designate for assignment, or DFA, that player, which means they have 10 days to either trade, release, or send that player to the minor leagues. When they designate a player for assignment, other teams can look at picking that player up if they'd like to, but if no other teams are interested in that player or he does not seek his release from the team, he'll usually be designated to that team's minor league AAA franchise. We'll talk about the different levels of the minor leagues in another episode. We'll also talk about the DFA a little bit more in another episode, but that's just a really quick overview of how you might remove a player from the 40-man roster to make room for a new player. And so that is the 25 and 40-man rosters, just broken down really basically. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. Remember to hit subscribe down below and ring that bell so you want to be notified every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday when a new episode goes live. Also, of course, you can follow me on social media where I'm at 90 Feet From Home on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I like to mix those three up just to keep you guys on your toes and so that they don't match that banner just to drive myself crazy in editing. Hope you enjoyed this episode and we'll see you back next time. Have an awesome day, guys. Bye!